The Constitutional Court, of course, decision to reject the IEC's application to postpone the municipal elections, rocking both the IEC and many political parties. There is now a real scramble on both ends to begin preparing for the elections that are set to happen between October the 27th and November the 1st. So how do these parties and the IEC, begin to prepare for this process? What real consequences does the ConCourt order have? Ebrahim Fakir is an electoral expert and director of programs at the ASRI. A very good evening to you, Mr. Fakir. Thanks indeed for your time. We were scheduled to talk all things elections and the IEC, of course, holding that press conference tomorrow. We'll hear from them. But then there's breaking news. Former President Jacob Zuma being released on medical parole. Are you surprised at all, given the fact that when he was arrested, he had basically been sent to the hospital wing of that particular facility?
Well, firstly, it's unsurprising that former President Zuma intervenes in our political landscape at a critical moment in ways always unexpected, but always undermining the kind of common set of rules that we all agree on and abide by. So, I think it really does require serious transparency on behalf of the correctional services and a whole range of others for the actual reasons why he's been granted medical parole, because this ought to be something which is available to all prisoners, irrespective of who they might be. And of course, in this case, I think the only thing that will satisfy the public mind, particularly not, of course, is the faction of people who support him, but the public mind in general, is kind of real transparency about the nature and the cause for why he was granted this medical.
I asked a previous analyst that I spoke to as well, Mr. Fakir, do you think this would be enough to quell the tensions that we've seen in South Africa? We've had threats of a resurgence of the violence that we saw take place in July. The acts that we saw, which in the beginning were very much linked to the imprisonment of the former president.
Well, that was the spark, Griselda, but I mean, it certainly doesn't sort of quell the factional and fractional tensions which exist inside the ANC, because they aren't necessarily centered around Mr. Zuma, even though he is a large part of it, right? But he's symbolic for the nature and character of the type of politics that certain people inside the ANC wish to pursue. So it's not all just about Mr. Zuma. Remember, some of them believe fundamentally that you must not have a constitutionally supremacist state. You must actually have parliamentary sovereignty. There are people who believe that the Public Finance Management Act is misplaced. There are people who believe that you could have economic transformation through greater prescriptive policy. There are others who believe fundamentally differently. So that's one set of problems which still remain as part of the factional divide. But the underlying socio-economic inequalities, the high unemployment, the trajectory of negative economic growth, if you want to call it that, still provides a powder keg from which social tensions can start to erupt. So, of course, it helps quell problems inside the ANC, but that's an elite pact inside the ANC. It doesn't solve any of society's problems in general.
Let's come to the issue. The IEC, of course, holding a media briefing tomorrow at about 1500 hours. They must decide by tomorrow, if I'm correct, Mr. Fakir, if they want to open for voter registration and amend the timetable. Is that correct?
That is correct. The court has granted them until tomorrow to inform the relevant minister if they want to open for voter registration until the 10th of September. Now, attendant to that is if you open voter registration, it means you are already making an amendment to the timetable. But there are other clauses in the order of the Constitutional Court. And remember, this is not a judgment, it's an order, because we haven't seen the judgment yet. We haven't seen the rationale. So what they're saying is the IEC decide whether you want to have another approach to registration, open up, determine if you want to have registration days or weekends, and you must inform the minister within 3 days what you intend to do, so that the minister makes a decision later on down the line about the date on which he proclaims the election. So the election must happen down the line between the 27th of October and the 1st of November. So it's giving herself that latitude, but it leaves it up to the IEC. Now, there's going to be multiple debates about if the IEC opens for voter registration and automatically amends one part of the timetable, does it automatically mean that it amends the timetable and opens up the space for candidate registration? Now, there's an argument which emerges here and goes in multiple different ways. One suggests, well, if they open for voter registration, they must open for candidate nomination also. Another view suggests no. The amendments which can be made to the electoral timetable are only limited to opening for voter registration, shifting the date for objections to people who appear or don't appear on the voters' roll, or objections to candidates which have already been nominated, and then to amend dates by which certain things have to happen, such as the code of conducts need to be signed, when the multi-party liaison committees start to work, when the conflict panels are incepted, and so on. So those aspects of the timetable can be amended. Sure, that's what the Constitutional Court has explicitly said. Whether they're saying that opportunity exists to amend the timetable applies to candidate nomination is an open question, different question.
Is there a possibility, though, Mr. Fakir, that a whole range of court cases could arise from this?
Absolutely, because if the IEC opens up and says, right, we're opening voter registration, some people, and the ANC, of course, is going to be first in line here, saying, no, well, you must open for candidate nomination also, because automatically it means that you have reproclaiming the election date, which means the old proclamation, as the court order says, falls away. And because you're opening a new proclamation, it opens up the process anew. However, there are lines in that Constitutional Court order which says very explicitly that where necessary, this can be amended, the timetable that is. So some people are going to say, well, if you open up, it doesn't apply to candidate nomination, so therefore we will take you to court. If they don't open up, there are others like the ANC who will again go to court and say, well, if they opened up, they must open up for candidate nomination. Other people are going to say, no, you can't, and we're going to contest what the court is saying, that you can only vary aspects of the timetable which don't relate to material aspects of candidate nomination and only relate to things around other aspects of the electoral timetable.
There's a specific time frame that the COGTA minister would have to pronounce on an election date. These are not normal circumstances. Is there a specific time frame that the COGTA minister would, does she have, to pronounce on that election date between, of course, that 27th of October and the 1st of November?
Yes, the Constitution is clear on this. It's 3 months. It's basically 3 months and 10 days, effectively, is the time period that you have as per the Constitution from the date of the last election. So if you calculate the 26th, the date of the 2016 local government election, the final date by which the Constitution prescribes the current local government election must be the 1st of November, ideally 27 October. So that's prescribed by Constitution. And she must make that proclamation along with the President of the Republic, and they've done that, so they've satisfied their regulatory criteria. However, Griselda, these are not normal circumstances. So this variation of given 4 or 5 day leeway is because of the intervening court proceedings.
Ebrahim Fakir, always a great pleasure speaking to you on the program, electoral expert and director of programs at the ASRI.